And some breaking news coming to us from the United States. This is President-elect Donald Trump saying that the Director of Intelligence, James Clapper, and there you can see the tweet on your screens, called him on Wednesday to denounce, in Donald Trump's words, the false and fictitious report that was illegally circulated, made up, phony facts. So Donald Trump, as is his wont, taking to Twitter to make this short statement about the allegations, both sexual and financial, relating to trips that he made to Russia. So let's talk about that some more, because we're going into our BBC Ask This series, where we put your questions to our correspondents and experts. And today we're focusing on the political row that we're just talking about over Donald Trump and that leaked memo which claims Russia has compromising material on the US president-elect. As you can see, with me is our diplomatic correspondent, Paul Adams. And just before we get to your questions, Paul, just your thoughts on what Donald Trump is saying about this phone call from the Director of Intelligence. That's not what he said publicly, is it?
No, this is a classic Donald Trump tweet. First of all, the timing, it's about 5 o'clock, 5:15, when he put this tweet out in the morning, Eastern time. He's doing his usual thing of releasing tweets in the early hours of the morning. And like so many of Donald Trump's tweets, it contains elements of truth and elements which don't sound quite so convincing. It is perfectly possible that James Clapper called him last night to convey in person what James Clapper put out in a statement late last night, which is that, in his words, James Clapper's words, that is, he was profoundly dismayed at the leaking of the dossier, which found its way onto the internet, but he said he did not believe it had come from within the intelligence community. So what Donald Trump is saying is he called me to denounce the false and fictitious report that was illegally circulated. He's making it sound as if James Clapper apologised for the circulation of a leaked report. That is not, we think, what James Clapper is doing. Yes,
he doesn't say in that James Clapper called me and said that the report was false and fictitious, does he?
Look, here we are, Anita. We should stop doing this. He is not even president yet, and we are analysing 140 characters of every tweet to figure out what exactly Donald Trump is saying.
Well,
that way madness lies.
Let's get on then to the viewers' questions, Paul. And this first one is from Dr. Sujinder Sangha on Twitter. The entire world has a stake in the USA presidency. Could the transfer, the inauguration, on the 20th of January be put on hold until the allegations are cleared?
Well, Sujinder, I'm afraid I've only just seen your question. I would love to have had a bit of time to think about it. I cannot, for the life of me, think of a case like this. And of course, we keep saying this about Donald Trump because everything about him and his candidacy and his election and all the rest of it is unprecedented. A case in which a presidential inauguration has been postponed for anything other than bad weather, which can sometimes be catastrophically bad in Washington in January. At noon on the 20th, Donald Trump will become president, whether he has completed the oath in full or not, whether he's even in Washington or not. That is just the law. Unless the 25th Amendment of the US Constitution has been invoked by Congress, there is simply no mechanism by which this would not happen. Now, if, let's say for the sake of argument, the dossier as published yesterday is true, if charges emanate from that, then who knows, something extraordinary could happen between now and the 20th. I think it's pretty unlikely, given the fact that the intelligence agencies have yet to indicate that they regard this dossier as anything other than interesting, potentially credible, but no more than that.
And in the absence of any physical tapes?
In the absence of any physical tapes. Are there any tapes? We don't know. If there are, where are they? Almost certainly not in the United States.
Billy George on Twitter asks, do you think the allegations made against Trump are too detailed to be fabricated? How reliable is the source? Well, there's more than one source, isn't there?
There are many, many sources. Essentially what we have is a report that we believe was drawn up by Christopher Steele, former MI6 officer, who left the British intelligence community about 10 years ago, set up his own private business, used his extensive contacts from his time in Moscow and elsewhere to offer numerous services. Obviously had a sufficiently good reputation for people in the United States to go to him and his company to do this, what they call opposition research, to find out if there was anything about Donald Trump's relationship with Russia that could be of use to his opponents. Well, on the face of it, he came up with a lot of material that could be of very great use. And he cites a number of sources, former and indeed serving officials within President Putin's entourage, who make some extraordinary allegations, but that is all they are at the moment. You say, are they too detailed? I think that is one of the things that's causing concern. They are so detailed that it would be difficult even for an intelligence agency with all of the paraphernalia and technology available to an agency to come up with something so unbelievably sort of damaging and destructive. So I think some people are raising questions about the level of detail. We've already heard that one or two details are potentially not true. There's some misspellings here and there. There was the key question of whether or not Donald Trump's attorney, Michael Cohen, attended a meeting in Prague with Kremlin officials in August of last year. Mr. Cohen says he's never been to Prague. And it was later reported by CNN that it might have referred to a different Michael Cohen. Now, if that's the sort of mistake that might be lurking in this dossier, you have to wonder how many other mistakes there might be.
So then, one from on email from someone calling themselves Siege. If the FBI saw this report back in August, why did they not make it public as they did the report on Hillary Clinton's suspect emails?
Look, Hillary Clinton's most passionate supporters will, of course, be smelling a rat. We know now that this report, or versions of this report, bits of this report, were circulating in Washington months ago. Harry Reid, the senior Democrat in the Senate, said much the same thing back in September. Why is the intelligence community, I think he referred to the FBI in particular, sitting on a dossier of explosive material about Donald Trump? Well, there may be a number of reasons for that. One being it wasn't their report. It wasn't anything that the American intelligence agencies had been responsible for putting together. They may have wondered about its provenance. They may have been trying to get some indication as to how good it was. But, you know, when an intelligence agency receives a dossier, even if it's written by a former intelligence officer from a friendly nation, they're not simply going to stick it out there in the public. They're going to want to take a long, hard look at it.
And this links to the next question from Andrew Mitchell in Cardiff, who asks, I would like to ask the BBC why it isn't informing viewers that the story on the Trump file was first punted around the media a year ago, yet no media outlet would run with it because it couldn't be verified. Well, you know, Andrew, I'll tell you, I certainly have heard us on the BBC informing viewers that they knew about this file some time ago.
I think what Andrew wants to know is...
We have been reporting that, haven't we?
Yeah, I mean, I think what Andrew and a lot of people want to know is, look, given the extraordinary nature of this, why were we not told? One or two BBC colleagues have been looking at this for some time. I was not personally aware of it. And I think collectively there wasn't a great deal of knowledge about it. Various media organisations in the United States did pick up on comments like the ones from Harry Reid. The Mother Jones magazine had a look at this, and one or two others did too. So the allegation that there was something out there that needed to be publicised, that did surface from time to time, but until the other day, none of us had actually seen it.
And just time for one more question. Frankie Rocket on Twitter asks, what options exist to remove Trump if and when the dangerous decisions start to roll out? Is impeachment a possibility, and how? I'm thinking Frankie means if anything is proven against President-elect Trump. Well, what options would exist to remove someone in that scenario?
It comes back to our first question about, you know, could the inauguration be put on hold? You can't impeach someone who's not yet president. And given the complexity of the allegations contained in this dossier and the fact that they do not emanate, and we have to keep saying this, from any American intelligence agency, it's going to take quite a long time to establish the veracity or otherwise of those allegations. So I think it's pretty unlikely. Here we are, 9 days before the inauguration, that we're going to see anything getting in the way. It does mean that on the 20th, Americans are going to witness this grand ceremony, one of the great moments in the American democratic experience, of a man being sworn in with his hand on the Bible, and all of these allegations about his sexual behavior, his business contacts, about whether or not he was used by the Kremlin in some way to influence the outcome of the presidential election, all of that hanging in the air. It's an astonishing, deeply, deeply depressing set of circumstances. And I guess we're going to be talking about it long after the inauguration's come and gone.
I expect you're right, Paul. Thank you very much, Paul Adams, our diplomatic correspondent. And thank you very much for sending in your questions to us as well.